So, a very good morning to all of you. We will be taking up our discussion on the internal security part. The questions that were asked from internal security in your general studies paper 3. And as per the no the tradition that is there, generally there are 4 questions that are asked, approximately worth 50 marks. They are almost every year. These are basically the questions that are asked. Okay, so we will be doing what? We will be taking up our discussion on those 4 questions. We will try and understand what exactly has been the nature of the questions, and along with that, we will also try and understand what was the primary demand. Try and answer it. Okay, so without any delay, let's begin with our discussion. Let's start with the very first question that was asked. The very first question was asked on terrorism. Obviously, we could have expected this question because of the fact that in India we did see that there were some specific incidents of a terrorism. Primarily, what happened in the Pahalgam attack. So there was always a chance that terrorism could be asked. Okay, and accordingly they asked a question, and this is a very interesting question for multiple reasons. First, let's look at the question per se. What is the question? Terrorism is a global scourge. How has it manifested in India? Elaborate with contemporary examples. What are the countermeasures adopted by the state? Explain. What are the countermeasures that are expected, and what are the countermeasures that have been adopted by the state? We have to explain that. Okay, so there are actually 2 parts of this question. First part of the question is about how terrorism has manifested in India. Okay, that is the first part. And the second part of the question is related to the countermeasures that have been adopted by the state. So what are the steps that have been taken by the state? That is the second part of the question. Okay, and there is also a statement, that is, it begins with the statement that it is a global scourge, which means that terrorism is not something which is just it's not something which is just a problem that India faces. Rather, it is currently a problem that is being faced by the global community. So every country, almost all countries that are there, they are facing this problem of terrorism. Okay, so why it's a global scourge? Obviously, you have to mention that in this introduction part, you have to first of all talk about terrorism. What is it? So you can say it represents unlawful use of violence and intimidation against civilians to achieve political, religious, ideological objectives. Okay, so it is violence which is used against citizens or institutions so as to evoke fear, because terrorism is about the genesis of the term terror. Okay, so it evokes fear, and this fear helps the institution, the terror groups that are there. They are therefore, the fear that is there, that is basically what allows them to achieve their political goals. They have some religious goals also, and they have some ideological goals as well. Okay, so that is how we can define terrorism. And then comes how is it something which impacts the globe, not just us but the globe? So you can obviously write about the fact that terrorism is not something which is just India's problem, so it transcends borders. Secondly, it is aided by technology, radical ideology, transnational funding, as well as organized criminal networks. So if you have attended internal security classes, you know that I specifically emphasized on the relationship between terrorism and organized crime. So if you look at your syllabus also, the syllabus explicitly mentions this. The syllabus explicitly mentions that there is a link between, there is a link between terrorism and and organized crime with respect to money, with respect to infrastructure that is there, that is available to the organized crime. It is a lot of times used by, it's lot of time used by terrorist groups. Like if you go back to the certain incidents that have happened, like the Mumbai blast that happened in the 1990s. So the explosives that was there, it came to India through the usage of the route that was otherwise used by organized crime groups. Okay, so there is a relationship between them, and we know that. Okay, so that is there, and obviously India is one of those countries which are considerably affected by it. But the question, now come to the main question. The main question is, how is it manifested in India? So when we say it being manifested in India, we can talk about its manifestation in a few points. Okay, like we can talk about cross border terrorism. Obviously the most impacted form of terrorism that is there in India is cross border terrorism. India does not have good relations with bordering countries, specifically when it comes to Pakistan. So there are lot of organizations which are either working in India, or these organizations that are working in Pakistan, but they are being aided by these the state basically aids them. Okay, so cross border terrorism or the state sponsored terrorism that is there against India, and you can see groups like the LET, Lashkar-e-Toiba, JEM, Jaish-e-Mohammed, or the Hizbul Mujahideen. These organizations that are there, they are good examples of cross border terrorism. Okay, and then you can also write about the incidents that has happened, whether it is Pulwama, whether it is the cases in Punjab. In fact, we can obviously write about the Pahalgam incident as well, because all of these were basically what? These were cross border, no, these were all instances of cross border terrorism. Okay, now religious extremism and radicalization, that is another manifestation that is there. Okay, so there are, if you look at the 21st century terrorism, it is said that 21st century terrorism that is there, 21st century terrorism is about religion, and the genesis of the activities are in religion. So religious based terrorism and extremism that is there, it is quite an example. And you can see organizations like the ISIS being present in India, though it is not, it does not have a huge presence, but there are splinter networks that are there, and these splinter networks are present in India. So there are splinter groups of ISIS, or there are ISIS trained terrorists who are basically, they are active in India. Okay, then comes left wing extremism, that is Naxalism. We have now in the definition of terrorism, we do include left wing extremism as well, which was not the case previously, but because of the growing incidents of violence taken up by left-wing extremism in the early 2000s, the definition of terrorism included even the left-wing extremism. Okay, and you will see primarily in the red corridor, that is Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Jharkhand, Andhra Pradesh. These are the states where you will find primarily them being present. Then comes ethno-nationalist insurgency, that means ethnicity centric. So there are lot of groups that are there in primarily if you look at the northeastern states, there are lot of groups which are ethnocentric groups. Now these are ethnocentric groups. So what are these groups doing? These groups primarily rely on ethnicity, and they appeal to ethnicity. Their demands are based on ethnicity, like Bodo organizations or Naga organizations that are there. These are what? These are ethnocentric organizations, and they take up insurgency. Their demand is to create a separate state, no, because of ethnicity. So they are ethnocentric insurgent and terror groups. Okay. NSCN is the most important example of it. If you look at the recent Manipur incidents that have happened, whether it is Kuki based groups or for that matter Meitei based groups that are there, these are all examples of nationalist insurgency and terrorism. Okay. Next comes urban tech enabled terrorism. So urban terrorism is something which is right now a phenomena which is growing. Though if you go back a few years, the focus was on hinterland terrorism. That means that terrorism which primarily exists away from mainland and away from these urban areas. But now there have been a number of incidents, primarily no in India also there have been number of cases. Like if you go back to the years 2005, 2006 and so on, you will find that number of incidents which were urban based incidents that were taken up, which resulted into loss of a considerable number of people in terms of lives that are there. That was what urban terrorism. Even today if you look at US, countries like US, they suffer from urban terrorism. There are number of incidents of urban terrorism there. Why? Because urban terrorism lacks, urban terrorism that is there, it does not require a considerable amount of training, and the impact that is there of urban terrorism, the impact is huge. Okay, because they target urban areas. Urban areas have considerable population, they have very important infrastructure, and they also have national symbols that are located, like the Parliament of India being targeted. And what is that? That is that's a incident where one of India's national symbol was primarily targeted. Okay, so urban based terrorism that is there. And finally lone wolf and hybrid terrorism. This is something, lone wolf attacks is something which you would find that there are number of incidents that has happened related to lone wolf attacks in Jammu and Kashmir as well. So just going back 2 years, you'd find that there were number of incidents where those individuals who were migrants from other parts of India, and they were working in the Kashmir region, they were targeted and they were subjected to lone wolf attacks. Similarly, there were other incidents in South Kashmir which was primarily related to this. Okay, so lone wolf attacks is another form of terrorism which manifests in India. Okay, there are other things also which you could write, like here you could mention narcotics terrorism, cyber terrorism. Those are also certain things which you can mention, but again you have to you have to ensure that it's only a 10 marker, so you cannot write more than 150 to 170 words. Okay, so you have to take that into account as well. Now the question is, what are the countermeasures that have been taken? Now the problem here is that if you write countermeasures just limited to the security measures, then that would be a problem. You have to take a wholesome view and accordingly address this very issue. Okay, like first, if we talk about the countermeasures, the legal measures that are there, so the UAPA law and the amendment that was brought to the UAPA law in 2019, that is something which has to be quoted. You have to write about how government now has the power to declare individual as a terrorist or individual organizations as a terrorist organizations, how that power is there with the government. Similarly, the NIA and the NatGrid that is there. So NIA is a legal institution, and 2008 NIA was formed. It is now a primary organization which investigates cases of terrorism. Even in the Pulwama attack, you'd find that NIA team was quite successful in investigating the phenomena. Even those individuals who were overground workers, I hope you know this term, overground workers. overground workers are those individuals who are helping the terrorists, है ना? They are doing what? They are helping the terrorists. So these overground workers and those who helped them with respect to supplies, etc., NIA rounded them off, and all of this did happen. Okay, so overground workers. So that part is there. There is something called as the legal and institutional way, which we have seen, UAPA, and along with it there is multi-agency center, which is a real-time information sharing center, through which all the different organizations that are there in India which are investigating such issues, they get real-time information from other agencies related to, if they require intelligence on certain things. Okay, then comes operational and security measures. So the surgical strike, the Balakot strike, and obviously Operation Sindoor, I have covered it in the next slide. So they are basically some of the steps that have been taken up. Similarly, modernization of paramilitary forces has been done. Then comes counter-insurgency and area domination operations in J&K, like Operation All Out, that was Operation All Out, which had been started in J&K to eliminate insurgents, separatists. That was basically taken up. Along with it, certain steps that have been also taken in the Northeast India as well as the Red Corridor, that is Naxal infected areas. Okay, then development and governance initiatives, whether it is the aspirational district program. If you know aspirational district program, it is extended to the least developed districts in India. So in order to, because we know that one of the major problems or causes which results into terrorism and all of this is underdevelopment. So in order to address underdevelopment, if schemes like the aspirational district program is taken up, so it would address the underlying cause, which is underdevelopment. So addressing that cause is important for not only ensuring that further there are no individuals and there are the support that is there, the overground support that they get, they do not get that. Okay, so for that, developmental measures are important. Then in the last few years, there have been number of peace accords that have been taken up, specifically in the northeastern region. Then there is rehabilitation and surrender policies also. In fact, there are certain specific strategies, like if we talk about the Jammu and Kashmir region, you must have heard about winning hearts and minds strategy, or WAMS. That is the armed forces that are present in Jammu and Kashmir. They assist in taking up some socio-economic development, so that people of Jammu and Kashmir that are there, they start doing what? They start they start understanding and also the trust in such organizations grow. So winning the hearts and minds strategy. Okay, again there is limitation related to words, but if you can write this, you can even write about this very idea as well. Okay, international cooperation, like if you look at organizations like the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So the Shanghai Cooperation Organization has an institutional structure called as RATS, anti-terrorism, it's regional anti-terrorism, and this initiative is taken up, and there are some other initiatives also which are a part of international cooperation. Okay, so this is basically what are the steps that have been taken up by India. Remember, recently a very important change that had happened, and you cannot miss this while you're writing this answer, though it's a 10 marker, but you have to dedicate some number of words to integrate this. In the background of what happened in Pulwama and Operation Sindoor, after we declared ceasefire, after that there was a new doctrine which was unveiled by the Prime Minister related to how we address the issue of terrorism. And today, the new doctrine that is there, it comprises of three important three very important aspects. What are those? First, decisive retaliation. That means the Prime Minister said, we will choose and we will attack those institutions on our own terms. That means the reply that we will give, whether it is related to the institutions or the timing of attack or the timing of retaliation, it would be in our own terms. One very important act. Second, no tolerance of nuclear blackmail. So Pakistan has always used nuclear blackmail in order to create a deterrence that India will not retaliate. In order to address it, this time the Prime Minister, and you will find even the other members of the Council of Ministers, whether it is the Defense Minister, etc., they have always talked about how India has, after the Operation Sindoor, called out Pakistan's nuclear blackmail, because we chose retaliation, and when we targeted the terrorist structures, after that what happened was Pakistan they did retaliate by choosing civilian as well as military infrastructures. We were able to with considerable ease ensure that these problems that were that they had caused, that is the retaliation that happened, we were able to address those without any damage. As per the government says that there was not, and there was no major damage that has happened. Okay, so no nuclear blackmail. And finally, the most important part of this doctrine is this, the third point, that is no discrimination between terror groups and sponsors. That means now India is very clear about the fact that when it comes to the terrorist organizations that are there, which we know are assisted from cross border, because we know India has whatever activities, terrorist activities that are being taken up, they are being taken up with the help of the Pakistani military organizations. It is with the help of these Pakistani military organizations that are there. Pakistani establishment is helping them, and in order to ensure that we create a deterrence, we have now been very clear that from next time onwards, what will happen is that if there is a terror attack that happens in India, so it will be assumed that it is not just the organization, so not the terrorist organization and the people involved, but also the sponsors, which means Pakistan, which is they will be considered as the ones who have sponsored terrorism and they have taken up terrorism in India. So we will not distinguish between terror groups and sponsors. Okay, so in this answer, a small part of this answer should also be included. It should also include the new doctrine that is there. Okay, moving on, coming to the next question. The next question is, the government of India recently stated that the left-wing extremism will be eliminated by 2026. What do you understand by left-wing extremism? How are the people affected by it? What are the measures that have been taken by the government to eliminate left-wing extremism? Now this is very interesting because this is only a 10 marker, and despite the fact that it is only a 10 marker, there is not just one, but there are multiple parts of this very question. Okay, so the most important thing that is required is how you structure your answer. Okay, so how will you start this? See the statement. Recently it stated that left wing extremism will be eliminated. So our introduction would be about defining what left wing extremism is, as it demands what is left wing extremism. So we have to define that, and we have to substantiate why is the government of the opinion that it will be eliminated by 2026. So we have to substantiate that view, and we will be doing that in the introduction itself. Okay, so we can write about in the introduction itself one line on the Naxalbari incident and the Naxalbari village where it all started. how it resulted into creation of a red corridor which comprised of no you can say moving from the southern part of India going to the eastern part of India. All of this, all the states that were there, they were affected by it. Okay, so you can mention that, and then you can also mention why is it that the government says that there has been no, we will be able to eliminate it. So you can talk about how it has shrunk to less than 70 districts, and out of these 70 districts, no, only 30 districts which are the most affected districts. Even now, less than 30 districts which are the most affected districts that are there. So over 90% of the incidents related to left wing extremism takes place in these 30 districts. Then you would write how there has been a decline of total deaths that are there. So there has been a 70% decline specifically when it comes to civilians as well as security forces. More than 70% decline is there. How we have taken up tech based security measures to overcome this problem. How government says that there will be complete elimination by 2026. Okay, you will mention these 3-4 stats because you don't have a lot of room. Okay, so in introduction you have to write almost in the whole, it's a 10 marker, 150 to 170 words. You cannot exceed that. So introduction would comprise of somewhere around 50 words. So I know I have written a comprehensive idea, but you cannot include all of it. You have to limit that. Okay, then comes what is the impact of it on the people. So there is loss of life. Sukhma Bijapur ambush that happened, 22 security personnel were killed. Most of the times it is not just about the persons being killed, it is also about the impact that it has on families, specifically if there are civilian deaths. Okay, then comes development deficit. One of the major problems is that moist affected violence has resulted into development deficit. So those areas which are affected by left wing extremism, developmental organizations, whether it is the private sector and other organizations that are there, they are they are not very much willing to they are not very much willing to go there. They are not very much willing that okay, let's take up developmental measures there. They do not like left wing extremism. They take up steps in order to ensure that there is no development, because if there is development, it would be completely in contradiction to the support that the people involved here are going to get. So development is contrary to their political objectives or their ideological objectives. So they specifically target developmental projects. Okay, so it creates development deficit. There is displacement and human rights violation, often because of the huge presence of security forces as well as Naxal organizations in the affected areas. People constantly live in fear, and that is the reason why most of the times they even decide to do what? They decide to just leave that very place. So they do what? They generally get displaced, and there are human rights violation also, because left wing extremism does what? Left wing extremism, one of the most important problems that this whole concept creates is a situation of lawlessness. So when there is a particular area where there is no law and order is not properly maintained, it gives rise to number of other problems. So it gives rise to number of other problems like human rights violation. So people living in the area, they are constantly subjected to human rights violation, and they are constantly subjected to human rights violation primarily from these Maoist organizations, because what they do is they frequently either they force them to give them their resources. Sometimes people living in these areas are forced to join such organizations. Okay, so human rights violation is also there. Then comes economic cost, infrastructure. Specifically, as I said, they target developmental projects. So if there are certain, if there are railway related projects that are going on, or if there are telecom, mining projects, so these are not allowed. They are not allowed to do what? Develop in these areas. They are not allowed. So either they are targeted, this results into obviously the private sector, they don't being involved. This creates a problem. And then there is obviously fear and distrust of governance. There is, in very simple terms, you can say there is a vacuum. There is a governance vacuum because people, because of the presence of left wing extremism, what happens is that the people that are there, living there, they are not being properly served even by even by government institutions. Why? Because those institutions and those people who are no supposed to be there and supposed to serve the people, like if there is a no primary health center, so doctors have to be there, teachers have to be there, but fearing their life, these doctors, these teachers that are there, they do not necessarily discharge their duties. So they are not present there. They are not concerned that, they think about themselves ki, if we are alive, we will only then we will be able to take this up. So this results into a governance gap, and this governance gap results into a lack of trust that is there between the people living in that area and also the government. Now this further reinforces, because if people are not being served, they are likely to do what? They are likely not to be happy with government policies, and in that case the possibility that they take up arms, that increases. Okay, so this handling of mistrust that is there, or the lack of trust that is there, it is one of the major problems, and the government has to take a lot of steps in order to address this. Okay, anyways, what are the steps that have been taken? See, security related measures, the most important step, the most holistic step that has been taken is the Samadhan doctrine. Okay, Samadhan doctrine, that is it's an acronym related to what? Related to how there needs to be strategic leadership, how there needs to be dashboard of indicators, how finance, that is their N stands for no access to funding, actionable intelligence. This is an acronym which talks about a 360-degree approach as to how we need to address the problems that are there in this very region, that is to be addressed through the Samadhan doctrine. But Samadhan doctrine, along with it, you will see presence of the organizations like the CRPF. So presence of such organization does what? It creates a deterrence. So now these Naxal organizations that are there, these Naxal organizations are not free to do whatever they want. They are not free to do whatever they want. Okay, now because the deterrence that is created by these organizations, and simply there also because of smart leadership, etc., one of the most important strategies that have been adopted by the security forces is how they clear, hold and develop. CHD. What is this CHD? If suppose there is a place which is infested because of left-wing extremism, first they are cleared out, which means there are security operations that are taken up. Those people who are involved there, they are either forced to go to some other place, or they are they are neutralized. Now what happens when once these organizations are not there anymore? Now the paramilitary forces that are there, they establish their temporary settlements there in order to hold that particular region, so that now because they have now freed that region from Naxalism, they have to hold it. And during this particular period, there needs to be development of that region that should be taken up. So better connectivity, better infrastructure, better health facilities, better education, all of this is done. Clear? So that is basically what we are trying to say here, the presence. So there are some security related measures that are taken. But again, developmental initiatives, whenever we are addressing any such problem, we cannot simply address it by only and only taking only security steps. There needs to be some other step, a 360-degree approach, where security is only one dimension, and in order to overcome the other dimensions of the problem, there needs to be other steps, and one of the most important part of it is addressing the socio-economic developmental issues. And therefore the government needs to take up some specific steps in order to address this deficit, the development deficit that is there. And accordingly, you will find that whether it is the aspirational district program that has been taken up, or for that matter, the special central assistance scheme with respect to education, health, livelihood areas, road requirement plan for infrastructure and connectivity, skill development centers like whether it is Roshni or for that matter Skill India, etc. So developmental measures are required. Thirdly, governance and right based measures, because the whole issue of left wing extremism, it starts with lack of rights, primarily in those areas where there are tribal population, when there is a marginalized population, and when the state fails to provide them with adequate rights. That is when there is discontent against the state, and this discontent against the state may translate into left wing extremism. So in order to address this discontent, what is required is that some governance and right related measures like the enactment of the Forest Rights Act, very important step, but you can see the timing of it is late, because the step was taken up in the year 2006, and the issue of Naxalbari incident, it was the issue of 1960s. So you can see it, we are 40 years late in, when we have to give these rights. If we would have initiated it at the very beginning itself, 1950s itself, these problems would not have become so intensive in India. Okay, anyways, so PESA law, Panchayati Raj Extension to Scheduled Areas Act, that aspect. So these certain steps need to be taken. Surrender and rehabilitation policies, because they are obviously citizens of India. So if Naxals are willing to surrender, so there should be a surrender policy in order to ensure their integration. We need to do what? We need to ensure their integration into the civilian life, because they are willing to give up arms. So a lot of states have taken up surrender policies, and center has financed these surrender policies. So the states are given the right to come up with their own policies, and the center does what? The center assists the states primarily in the form of finances, so that they are able to take up proper surrender policies. Okay, next comes international cooperation that is there. You can write international cooperation because it's a part of terrorism, etc. But primarily these ideas. Okay, so these are the measures that have been taken by the government. Okay, now see, what was the question? How are people affected by it? We have answered it. We have also answered what measures have been taken. We have answered this question. Now come to the third question. Now the third question is what? What are the major challenges of internal security and peace process in the northeastern states? The northeastern states. Map the various peace accords and agreements initiated by the government in the past decade. Now those who have attended internal security classes, for you it would be very easy to be able to answer this question as well. In fact, all the questions we had directly discussed it in the class. But these questions are very easy. Obviously, some current ideas that you had to add, but otherwise it's a very straightforward question. There is nothing very difficult here, because primarily what UPSC has done is that they have actually taken up the syllabus and they have framed easy questions on it. So it is something which is explicitly mentioned in your syllabus, Northeast. So what are the major challenges? Obviously you will come up with an introduction related to the northeastern states and the issues there. I have not taken up that in order to get directly to the point, but there should be a 2 or 3 sentences on introduction, and then you have to come to major internal security challenges. There is presence of insurgent groups. So there are lot of insurgent groups, as we have already seen. The ethnicity idea, ethnic conflicts. So lot of groups, you will find that these groups that are there, they are ethnicity based groups. If we talk about NSCN, Nationalist Socialist Council of Nagaland or Nagalim, that is there, which means they are talking about the Nagas and their territorial rights. Similarly, if you look at this organization, Bodoland, Ahom, all these organizations that are there, most of these organizations are what? Ethnicity based organizations. So not only is there a conflict between government and these groups, there is an internal conflict that is there between these ethnic organizations that are there. So it's not a one dimensional conflict where government and these institutions are basically, they are in conflict with each other. Here there is a conflict between different parties, different ethnic organizations that are there. There is a conflict between them as well. That is also the problem that is there. So ethnic conflicts are there. Then comes border disputes and border issues. Because these are northeastern states and generally the terrain is such that it is difficult to fence these borders. And this has resulted into porous borders. And that is the reason why there are some issues which have come up because of this. Like there is issues of easy movement of militants, drug trafficking, arms smuggling. Now in drug trafficking, here you have to understand that this is a separate, I have also mentioned it as a separate issue. Why? Because this is an issue, this is an area which falls in between the golden triangle and the golden crescent. So you will find India is sandwiched between the golden crescent, which is the northwestern part of India. So there you will find Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran. They are there. These are what? They form a crescent. And similarly, then you will find the golden triangle, which is the, again, northeastern states and the Southeast Asia part. You'll find these are the drug trafficking hubs that are there. India is sandwiched between them. And therefore, the problems of drug trafficking is also there. Then comes interstate disputes. So it's not just the fact that they are fighting with on the basis of ethnicity. You'll find that there are also issues related to interstate disputes. So there are interstate territorial and boundary disputes that are also there. That is also the case. Then comes illegal migration. If you look at the Assam problem that is there, it's primarily about illegal migration. If you look at the we talk about Assam, but that does not mean that only Assam is affected by it. If you look at all the northeastern states, they are right now in a state where they have to defend their culture. They feel that because of this illegal migration that is constantly going on from Bangladesh towards the northeastern part. So what has happened is that this has raised a question related to protecting their culture. So that has become an issue. And then comes poor governance and development. So generally, northeastern states are neglected. Northeastern states were neglected, we can say, because if you look at their, if you look at how many Lok Sabha seats or what kind of representation they have, you will find that approximately 25 seats are there from whole of the northeastern states to the Lok Sabha, which means that if suppose a political party has to come to power at the center, they do not need the northeastern states, even if the northeastern states are voting against them, but they can easily come to power in the in the center. So this is the reason why they have been politically neglected as well. Okay, so that has also been a problem. Now comes what are the accords that have happened. So you can see the Nagaland, there has been a specific accord in 2015, though this has not yet materialized, but this was a framework agreement which was taken up. The decision was that in the course of time we are going to take up no, we are going to decide the details of this particular agreement. However, because no because of no because of certain demands that was raised by these organizations like the IS I no NSCN, which was related to a separate flag and a separate constitution, that is the reason why this framework agreement has been stalled. But otherwise it was done in order to resolve the Nagalim issue, which is the greater Nagaland issue, which the NSCN had demanded. If you come to Tripura, you'll find that there has been a Bru-Riang agreement that was there. In order to, there were problems related to, no, the Mizoram, this Bru or Riang group of people, they used to live in Mizoram, and there were some specific issues resulted into them being they were being displaced, and they were living in Tripura now. So the government has decided to come up with an agreement so as to provide them with certain benefits provided they give up arms. Okay. Then comes the NLFT surrender that has happened in Tripura itself in the year 2000. Then there is the agreement between the Tipra Mota, that is there are three organizations that are there involved: the government of India, the organization, some other militant organizations have been involved. This was taken up in the year 2024 itself. The Bodo Accord, which happened in the year 2020. Then comes the Karbi Anlong Peace Agreement 2021, the Adivasi Peace Accord in 2022, the Dima Hasao District Accord. So Dimsas and the Dimsas that are living in this region, they have also taken up arms. Now that has been resolved in 2023. Then there is an Ulfa agreement also, where the United Liberation Front of Ahom, they decided to enter into a deal with the government of India. In Manipur also there was a agreement related to cessation of operations with ZUF. This is again a militant organization that was there. Okay, so these are basically the groups, and these are basically the agreements that are there. See, remember, it's a 15 marker, but because there are two parts of this particular question, I would not be able to write everything about this particular accord. I would be able to write only a few ideas. And what you also have to understand is that the question specifically says that what is the agreements in the past decade. So we are not talking about the Assam Accord that happened in the 1985 or the Mizo Accord that happened in 1970s. We are not to discuss that. Okay, we are only discussing those accords which have been recently taken up. Okay, and there are in the last 6-7 years, you'll find there have been number of such accords which have been signed in order to bring about peace in the northeastern states. And that is the reason why, if you look at the northeastern states, there has been a considerable calm that is there in the northeastern states, and developmental measures have been taken up in the northeastern states considerably, infrastructure development, etc., because of the success of most of these agreements that are there. Okay, next, and obviously the fourth question, the last question that was there, again a 15 marker. So the last two questions were a 15 marker. Okay, so you have around 200 words, 225 words to write about there. Why is maritime security vital to protect India's sea trade? Discuss maritime and coastal security challenges and the way forward. So the question that is there has three parts. First of all, it says why is it important. Second, it talks about challenges, and third, it talks about way forward. So again, it's a 200 word answer, so you cannot integrate everything. You have to touch upon the greater ideas and elaborate upon some of them. Okay, so if we talk about introduction part, so introduction part would be addressing this: why is it vital to protect India's sea trade? Why is maritime security important in that sense? And we will be mentioning about an introduction related to maritime security. We will be talking about trade, how 70% of, or More than 70% of trade by value happens here. 90% of the trade by volume happens through this particular sea route. You have to mention that. Primarily the no the routes that are there, it is for economic stability, energy security, a very important aspect, and then obviously geopolitical influence. You will write some points like related to, if we are talking about importance of maritime security, you can write about economic lifeline. Without maritime trade, India's economy would be severely affected. Okay, as you have seen, 70% by value, 90% by volume. So if we talk about all the exports, imports that are there, primarily it happens through sea route. Okay. Then comes energy security. So we are importing, as you know, right now, in fact, India is also under sanctions because of importing of energy from Russia. So this energy that we requirements that we import, we basically take the sea route there. Okay. And then comes strategic interest, because India is located in the obviously the Indian Ocean region, and this Indian Ocean region that is there, it is strategically very important, because if you look at the Strait of Malacca for that matter, or the Strait of Hormuz that is there, this is particularly the region where there are, this is like Strait of Hormuz is a gateway. It is a gateway to, if India wants to trade with going to the Middle Eastern states, or for that matter, if India wants to trade with Europe, it is the Strait of Hormuz which is primarily used there. And along with it, this is also the region where there is a lot of piracy which exists. Okay. So in order to address that problem, we have to have an effective maritime security. Along with that, you will find that there are regional interests, like, India wants to become a net security provider in this region. So that is a security interest, a strategic interest which India has. If India wants to cooperate with the global south, like the African countries that are there, if India wants to cooperate with them, or going far beyond, if we are talking about the Latin American nations that are there, this is the global south. So cooperation with global south can happen also because of the maritime region. So whether it is Southeast Asia, so we can cooperate with Southeast Asian countries in order to become a net security provider in this region, or we can cooperate with African countries to ensure that. So strategic interests are also at play here. Then comes, what exactly are the security challenges? So security challenges are what? Piracy and terrorism. Maritime terrorism, piracy, very much in this region. You must have heard about the Gulf of Eden, and you must have heard about the issues that are there. So that region primarily infested, it is infested because of piracy. So what we need to do is we need to address it. This is a major challenge. Secondly, illegal activities, whether it is about smuggling, narcotics, human trafficking, or for that matter unregulated fishing, all these things are another challenge that is there. Thirdly, porous coastlines. And why is porous coastlines very a very important challenge? You have to look at it from the perspective as to which are the countries that India border with. Which are the countries that India border with? You have to look at that, because if you look at India's maritime borders, primarily you will find that most of the countries are politically not stable. So if they are not politically stable, there is always a problem that if there is a political problem, they will try and do what? They will try and come to India. So we have to address this particular issue of porous maritime borders. Then comes border disputes. Most of the countries that are there with who are maritime neighbors, India shares certain disputes related to that. Like Sri Lanka, you have the Kacha Island. Though the Kacha Island, India has formally said that India has recognized the sovereignty of Sri Lanka, but the fishermen that is there of Tamil Nadu and that region, they do not accept that. So that is an issue. You must have also seen Bangladesh, and recently how Muhammad Yunus, he talked about Bangladesh, and how he said that Bangladesh is the only country which, which is an important country in this region. If you look at the northeastern states, they can be, he had his own political masters to please, but he said things which, which raises concerns for India. So India does not enjoy good relations when it comes to the maritime borders with its, with its neighboring countries, even when it comes to Pakistan. So Pakistan also has claimed, Pakistan also has claimed certain areas like the Sir Creek, and it has claimed that it is, it is Pakistan's territory, though it is under India's control. So this is, we do have certain disputes there, so that is an issue. Then comes limited infrastructure, and when we talk about infrastructure, we are discussing ports, radars, petrol assets, trained manpower. And what happened in Mumbai? We know that the security challenge emerged from, from the maritime boundaries. So that is one of the issues also. Interagency coordination. Number of organizations are there. There is the, if you look at the Coast Guard, the Indian Navy, then you will find that there is also the coastal police that has been created. So there are multiple agencies that are there, and how these agencies, how these agencies that are there, how they are able to coordinate with each other in order to ensure effectiveness, that is another issue which is there. And finally, environmental risks such as oil spills and so on. Okay, so we cannot ignore that. That is also an important issue. Now, when it comes to way forward, what are the way forward? First, modernizing surveillance. There are number of steps that we have taken up, and there are number of steps we have to take up. So surveillance system that is there, surveillance of our seas that is there, it has to be modernized. Secondly, strengthening of our forces. So when we talk about coastal police, or when we talk about, the coast guards that are there, we have to strengthen them. Like coast guards even today primarily depend upon the navy for, helicopter services and so on. So that is a kind of infrastructure, that is the kind of strength that we need to ensure, assets which are present to the Coast Guard so that they can, independently act, no need for them being dependent upon the Navy. Then comes enhancing infrastructure, specifically maritime infrastructure would mean creation of maritime police stations, ensuring that there are proper jet skis, etc., which are present for the people to take up proper guard of these institutions, etc. So that is one thing. Then comes integrated command. We have to create an integrated command for all these organizations. So Navy, Coast Guard, Coastal Police, we have to have an integrated command so that there is a proper mechanism of coordination that is there. We have to take up regional cooperation. You can give an example of the Sagar initiative which India has taken up for the Indian Ocean countries, IOCs that are there. India has taken up the Sagar initiative that is there. So what can additionally be done in order to ensure better cooperation? That is again an initiative that is required. Community engagement, involvement of coastal communities, specifically when we talk about fishermen. And there have been certain initiatives which have been taken so that these fishermen and the communities that are there, they could act as the eyes and ears of the security agencies. Okay, they have to do what? They have to act as the eyes and ears of security agencies. But they would do that only if there is a proper involvement of these communities. They should not feel alienated. If they feel alienated, they would not involve themselves in that. Okay. And then comes certain legislative reforms that are there. So legislative reforms like clarifying agency role. As we said, there is overlap and duplicity of command. Then comes mandate for compliance of port as well as shipping security. That is another thing that is required. Like there were audits that have been conducted of Indian ports, and it has been found that most of the Indian ports that are there, they are not actually secure. So they have failed their audit. So there needs to be some legislative mechanisms enacted in order to ensure that these ports that are there, there are some mandated rules, regulations which they have to follow. Okay, this is the way forward. Clear? So these were the 4 questions, around 50 marks, which you can always expect every year. 50 marks question you get from this very topic. So I hope this clarified any doubts that you had, and also it gave you a way as to how you should be approaching the questions that have come from these topics. Okay, how you need to structure them. And as you can see, the demand is very simple. So you need not go through an n number of sources. You need to look at what the basic syllabus says and accordingly address those demands. Okay, so that is it. We will be meeting again. Till that particular time, thank you everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.